something something set the dominoes off. If you saw the dominoes moving, would you say to yourself that nothing must have started the first sequence? Or that if something first moved the first domino, if something else had to happen before that, right? Then you have to explain then what happened before that, and what happened before that, and what happened before that. The only way you can get to the point of the person moving the first domino is if there was something from the very beginning that had nothing before it. That's the only way to explain anything that happens after. If there was a tornado or just a wind traveling from Florida to Australia, it had a starting point, it had an ending point. To say that, there's nothing at the very beginning to make this sequence happen, it's illogical. And when we talk about the beginning of the universe, there had to be something other than the universe to make the universe cause this Big Bang thing to happen, because there was nothing that within the Big Bang itself that suggests that it can just spontaneously, start the explosion without any cause, right? And so we're saying that by necessity, that we would argue that the creator of the heavens and the earth was the one who caused this initial movement to happen. And they would say, how would you know it's a creator? Then we can use some other side arguments, like the fact that when you look at the universe, it's not all chaos. There's actually a ton of intelligent design around this. We look at our bodies, these 37.2 trillion cells in our bodies, and these cells know how to communicate with each other. They know how to maintain homeostasis. They know how to equalize the right amount of fluids on the inside and the outside of the cell. They know how to carry nutrients to other cells. There are hormone messengers in our body that tell our body to, at certain points, raise our heart rate, raise our respiration rate, raise our transpiration or our sweat rate, increase our body to shiver if we're cold, the opposite homeostasis effect. Like, we have all these checks and balances that exist in all life. And that for to say that this is just random, it actually doesn't really make any sense. It's way more complicated for things to exist than to not exist. And it's way more complicated for life to exist, and especially to claim that it would happen for no cause or no reason. Like, our bodies are so sophisticated that, like, even when we're sleeping, that our body is able to regulate our temperature and our metabolism and our circulation and all these different things. And to say this is all random, does that really even make any sense? If we took a tornado, we took a billion tornadoes, and we ran them through the desert, right? Would we expect to get like a perfect mansion or a perfect glass house? If we had lightning and we had sand and we had wind, hypothetically, we could have the basic, the materials or the forces that we would need to build glass. Would we ever end up with a mansion in the middle of the desert by just random blasts of lightning and wind and sand? Would it ever be like a perfect shape of a mansion? It would never happen, because this takes intelligence, right? So this is the intelligent design argument. And so the idea that something came before the universe, if somebody might try to argue that we understand that it had to have been something, but why did it have to be just one god? Why couldn't it be many gods? So this is what a Hindu would probably say to you, right? Because Hindus are mostly polytheist, even though they have in their scriptures that essentially there is only one god. But of course, they have a lot of other stuff that indicates it went in a polytheistic nature, according to their understanding. Doesn't mean that that's correct, but I'm just saying that things change. Originally, they believe that there is one true God, even though they think that there's like reflection gods and stuff like this. But why did it have to be just one God to create the universe? If there were more than one God, then we would have we've opened something called Occam's razor, which is the idea of we've made things more complex without any reason or purpose or evidence. And also, if you had multiple gods, you have to explain then which god came before which god. And if there were multiple gods, then which one is actually the one at the top of the hierarchy that has the dominance over others? And Allah Azza wa Jal told us, this is a bit of a side point, and you might not have to mention this right away because, like I said in the beginning, we're going to focus just on logical evidences. But just as an aside, Allah Azza wa Jal told us in the Quran that had there had been multiple gods, they would have competed with one another for dominance, to basically overpower and to maintain control over the universe. If you had multiple gods that were omnipotent and omniscient, all powerful and all knowing, then you would see the laws around you in this universe changing continuously. You would see that the law of thermodynamics are changing, that one day the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius, the next day it's like 255 degrees Celsius. But you don't see these massive changes in patterns in all these basic laws of physics. You see constant laws. On top of that, you see things like the Fibonacci scale or the golden ratio, that there's a mathematical ratio for like the majority of things that are on this earth, and they follow this mathematical pattern. So, for example, that your finger, your beginning of your phalange of your finger, if you multiply by 1.6, you get the next section of your finger. You multiply that by 1.6, you get this length of your finger. If you multiply that, you get the hand. And if you multiply that by 1.6, then you get the length of the forearm. And you have this golden ratio throughout the human body. You find it also in the currents of oceans. You find it in the galaxies above our heads. You find it in sunflowers. You find it in the nautilus shell. You find it in so many different examples of things that are created on this earth, and it's a consistent mathematical pattern. Can you really say that this is all just by chance to have this consistent pattern, or is this a pattern of an intelligent designer? And then again, going back to the point of why does it have to be one? Because the laws are consistent that we see in the physical universe around us. So now I'm using a non-Quranic argument, just by saying that the fact that we see that gravity works the same way, that the melting and freezing points of different chemicals and elements, they consistently behave the same way. The fact that we continuously, our body basically functions the same way, same survival instincts each day, that these are consistent patterns and these aren't being swayed into a completely new system on a daily basis. This shows that it's being managed without interference by other entities if they were to have the so-called same level of power. And then the reason why Allah Azza wa Jal is uncreated and uncaused is, again, due to the logical necessity that the first mover, what in Greek philosophy they would call there's a word for it, the not what is it, I think they just say like if I was to translate it into English, the uncaused cause, right? There's another word for it, the primary mover, I think. And the idea here is that, like, you think of almost anything in this world. You think of a game of pool, like the billiards game with the ball. Those balls aren't moving on that table if there's not a force acting upon those balls on that billiard table. No force, no change. And in order for the first change to happen in the game, there has to be something outside of the game that makes the game go into action. And it's kind of like, a friend of mine gave me this example of like literally a video game. When you think of a video game, you think of all the characters in the game and the weapons and the items and, you know, your health bar, and then there are all of these quests. But the game itself doesn't run without a programmer. Does the programmer of the video game need to be in the game for the game to work? The answer is no. Does the programmer of the game need to be made from the game for the game to work? The answer is no. And just like, I'm just trying to give a basic example for people who, especially when you're dealing with atheists, you give them concrete examples. The same way how a computer programmer or a software developer does not have to be the software to invent the software, and the same way how the software developer is necessary for the software to be constructed, likewise, this universe doesn't need Allah to be part of it for Allah to exist, but this universe needs something external from this universe to put this universe into motion. So I hope, inshallah, the analogy makes sense. I'm going to have to skim because of time, but I'm just basically, reiterating the things that I've already mentioned. This universe is limited. It can be subject to change and dependent, but God is independent, unlimited, and God's attributes that do not change. Allah is always all-knowing, always all-powerful, Allah is always Al-Qadir, all-powerful, Al-Alim, all-knowing. Allah is always Al-Awwal, the first before everything else. So these never change in Allah's attributes. Hence why He's completely different than His creation. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So He is nothing like the creation that He has created. And we already talked about the difference between an argument and a claim. Arguments have evidences, claims are just claims. And that things that exist in this universe, you can see the sequential events. Something affects something else to make something else move, to make something else change in temperature and height and weight and position. But there always has to be something else causing that, right? But there has to be something before all other sequences for the first sequence of events in physics to occur. And obviously the example of the dominoes. And then there's something about two well-known, what do you call it? How should I explain this? These are in philosophy, these are two ways of proving that the universe could not have just made itself. So the reason why the universe couldn't make itself is because of the law of causality. You cannot exist and not exist at the same time. You cannot say that this water bottle is here and not here at the same time, right? It either is or it isn't. You can't say you're both here and physically not here at the same time. Like if somebody throws a chair at me right now, I'm going to stick my arm up because I know it's coming, right? Like I'm not going to claim that, I'm not going to pretend like I don't exist when I know I exist. And obviously, simplistically put, the universe can't not exist and exist at the same time when we know it came into existence. And even atheists admit it came into existence. So then how? And then, could the universe have created itself? No, because if it wasn't there yet, then how could it have created itself? So this is the law of contradiction. You can't say this water bottle made itself and it wasn't even a water bottle yet. It had to be made, it had to be constructed, and something had to do that. So these are two main philosophical laws, the law of causality and the law of contradiction. Because the universe couldn't create itself, and because the universe couldn't exist and not exist at the same time, therefore those are not valid options. So therefore something external that was prior to the existence of the universe had to actually put the universe into motion and create it. Obviously create and then put into motion. And why Allah is the infinite and the unlimited in His power and knowledge, these are from His attributes, right? He is al-awwal wal-akhir. He will exist before all things and after all things. Just like how a computer programmer can exist whether the game is being played or not, the game is not being played, like a video game, just as an analogy. And Allah is Zahir wal-Batin. Allah can make Himself obviously fully apparent, like He will on the Day of Judgment, and He can make Himself hidden. And He is Al-Alim, He's the knower of all things. So with these types of attributes, and Allah who's Samad, being self-sufficient, He doesn't need anything, He's not dependent on anything else. And because Allah and Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allah is one, these are all the criterion for being the true originator of the universe. And by that, we would have, inshallah, logically proven the existence of God. Are there any questions or comments? I apologize for being, at least 5 minutes, if not 8 full minutes late. I know I joined the chat, I think maybe 2-3 minutes late. So about maybe 5 minutes over time. But were there any questions about today's session or comments? So you guys are good? And inshallah ta'ala, hopefully you guys benefited.
We're good.
Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, guys, so inshallah we'll see you next session, and I hope you guys are able to use these skill sets that we're teaching you guys in real life. Barakallahu fikum. May Allah bless you all. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.